And to help us further delve deeper into the summit result from Hanoi, we are joined by Dr. Bong Young-shik, Senior Researcher at Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies, and our reporter Cha Sang-mi. Thank you so much for being here with us again for this
You're
session.
welcome.
Right, first of all, Dr. Bong, the outcome, as some are rather critical of it, but we can also view it as a positive outcome because no deal could be a positive outcome.
Right. No deal is better than a bad
deal.
And we have no reason to be totally pessimistic because both leaders seems to be on the same page to acknowledge a continuous negotiations and dialogue. So we may not see the third summit meeting between Kim and Trump sooner or later, but that does not necessarily mean that both sides will totally abandon working level meetings, which might be far more productive in terms of getting both sides narrowing the gap. The upside of this so-called collapse of the Hanoi summit meeting is it became so clear what North Korea wants, which is sanction relief, and what the United States wants is denuclearization that is defined in a specific way, meaning that there must be verification of all the sides that interest the United States. Yongbyon alone will not suffice to meet the demand and expectation of the Trump administration. So clarifying both sides' bargaining position and major demands is a clear upside of this collapsed summit meeting in Hanoi.
All right, clarification is key, and also access will be another obstacle standing in the way for the reclusive regime to allow the outside experts to come in for the checkups.
Right, but the brunt of the burden is on the shoulders of Mr. Kim Jong-un for two reasons. One, there will be prolonged stalemate or status quo, at least for a while. And then the status quo will be more painful for North Korea because North Korea, not the United States, is under the pressure of economic sanctions. What about United States? Well, it was reported by President Trump that at the first meeting, Chairman Kim Jong-un unconditionally offered that North Korea would not engage in further nuclear test or missile test, with or without the success of the Hanoi summit meeting. So maintaining the current situation will not worry the United States in terms of watching North Korea increasing its capability to attack the United States with long-range missiles topped with a nuclear warhead. But if current situation continues, then North Korea has to endure the pressure of economic sanctions.
Right. Sang-mi, I understand there was a response coming from the White House after the presser by President Donald Trump.
Right. When we look back a little bit to the press conference, President Trump actually had in his hotel was, he actually said that, he had the agreement papers on the table to be ready to be signed, but he walked away from it because he wanted to do everything right and not fast, right? So he actually wanted to focus on that. But before that, we actually had an announcement from the White House, and it was from the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, who said that President Trump and Chairman Kim had a very good and constructive meeting in Hanoi. But I want to focus a little bit on this word constructive, right? Constructive, a lot of commentators say that this is a word that the U.S. actually uses sometimes as a diplomatic speech to avert or to show us, that it is a word that, some negotiation didn't really go well. Maybe there were some differences, but they want to make it obscure. So what do you think about that, Dr. Bong?
Well, I agree with you, Sang-mi, that in diplomatic jargon, constructive sometimes, more often than sometimes, means contentious, very raw exchange of their positions behind the door.
Speaking of jargons and double talks, President Trump also specifically mentioned China and President Xi Jinping in a very positive light initially in terms of being constructive in the efforts to denuclearize North Korea. But then he also criticized China about the matters with Washington in terms of trade.
Right. Bashing China has been the hallmark of the diplomacy of the Trump administration, and he did not waste another opportunity to do that. As I said, that constructive may mean the contentious, but in this regard, expecting constructive role of China may mean that not China being neutral interlocutor between North Korea and the United States, but China being on the side of the United States in terms of pushing North Korean leadership to actually carry out a concrete and verifiable process of denuclearization. So China is under the very watchful eyes of the Trump administration, and China has been deeply involved in its own business in dealing with the United States with a core technology dispute and trade war. So I don't think Xi Jinping government has a lot of autonomy to shore up assistance and support for Kim Jong-un leadership, at least in the short term.
Right. Sami, going back to China, it has been the big brother state for North Korea, and I understand there is a possibility of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un dropping by, paying a visit to China, meeting with perhaps President Xi Jinping on his way back.
Right. For now, what we know is that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be visiting Vietnam as official visit for the next 2 days until Saturday, and he will be taking his train back, his famous train, back to Beijing. Back to Pyongyang. But of course, we do not know whether he will drop by in Beijing. But some commentators some experts do tell us that China is expecting a very important meeting right now. It is called the National People's Congress, which is an annual Congress that happens every year and every first week Friday of every March. So it will be happening again next week. So some are saying that maybe it is not the right time for Kim Jong-un to visit. But of course, when we look back in the previous year, the Congress was actually put off because of the trade negotiations with the U.S. So it is a possibility, and we do know that Kim Jong-un had visited China 4 times already recently. So he always has a tendency to go and debrief President Xi about every diplomatic move he makes, especially with the U.S. So,
but I still believe that the Xi Jinping government's capacity to substantiate and support North Korea's own claim that United States need to ease all existing economic sanctions in their entirety. I think that autonomy is quite limited, judging from the fact that in the previous summit meeting between Kim and Xi, Kim Jong-un complained that we cannot really achieve any great things with the United States as long as the United States maintains existing economic sanctions. And nothing has changed from that situation after this Hanoi summit meeting. It became only clear that Trump administration realizes that economic sanctions really hurt North Korean regime, and there is no reason for the Trump administration to negotiate or give up the most powerful, most potent instrument to control the behavior of North Korea. So economic sanctions cannot be eased, even with participation of Xi Jinping government of China to help the cause of North Korea.
Is there room for improvement in terms of working talk members on both sides? It seems North Korea, they certainly take their orders directly from the top, and they don't have a lot of freedom or autonomy. And for the U.S. side, they may not have the best nuclear experts on their side.
Well, but here's the thing. In the absence of another summit meeting between U.S. and North Korea at the level of the top leadership, the significance of working level negotiations became even more important. And status quo favors the United States. So working level government officials of the United States government are relatively more empowered. So North Korean leadership has to be really serious about engaging in give and take, denuclearization. Because denuclearization as a demand has been very clearly defined in this Hanoi summit meeting at the level of U.S. President. So, which makes the job for the working level government officials of U.S. government far easier because they have a very clear directive coming from the White House. But compared to the position of the U.S. government officials, North Korean officials, because of the rigidity of the system, do not enjoy the freedom or autonomy in engaging creative negotiations with the American counterparts. And China as well. It's an authoritarian regime, so the working level government officials' autonomy is not really comparable to that of the U.S. officials.
What's the next few months going to be like, not just for U.S. and North Korea, but especially for South Korea, who has been tasked with playing the mediator role?
Well, the first task for President Moon Jae-in and the Blue House is to revise the speech to be delivered in a few hours in commemoration of the centennial anniversary of the March 1st independence movement. Because of the unexpected fallout of the Hanoi summit meeting between North Korea and the United States, I believe that it is inevitable for the Blue House, the President's office, to substantially revise the text of the speech. And also, the vision to promote inter-Korean human exchanges, cultural activities, and possibly some economic joint activities that are not prohibited by the United Nations Security Council resolutions have to be revised significantly.
Sami, could you walk us through the expected agenda before the summit actually happened as compared to the first event that happened in Singapore?
Right. When we look back just less than 8 months ago, actually 8 months ago, in Singapore, there was the landmark summit between the two leaders, and they agreed on the 4 pillars of this denuclearization, working towards denuclearization. First was, of course, to establish new relationship, bilateral relationship between the United States and North Korea. Second was to jointly work towards building a stronger peaceful regime on the Korean Peninsula. And perhaps this would be the most important thing for North Korea to work towards complete denuclearization. And of course, they also discussed about repatriation of the American soldiers who fought in the Korean War in 1950. But of course, they were supposed to build upon all these 4 pillars, and perhaps there were some 12 or more agenda on the table, as we know of, but it did not happen, right?
Right. Moving forward, lastly, before we let you go, Dr. Bong, just very quickly, what can we expect in the next round of talks between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump?
Well, nothing too different from the agendas on the table in the Hanoi summit meeting. Can you verify the genuine intention and the plans for Kim Jong-un leadership of North Korea for denuclearization? We only have words allegedly spoken by this supreme leader of North Korea that North Korean leadership is truly committed to keeping the entire Korean Peninsula free from nuclear weapons. Mr. Kim Jong-un allegedly said that I'm a father and a husband, and I do not want to see my children living with nuclear weapons. Some people would interpret that remark as a definite and clear reference to denuclearization. Other people would say that, well, that's something that is not too different from what was already said by his grandfather, the great leader Kim Il-sung, that his dying wish was purported to be keeping the Korean Peninsula free from nuclear weapons. But North Korea has developed nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles to deliver nuclear weapons anywhere in the world for the past 25 years. So words do not really completely match with the deeds of North Korean leadership. So United States will want to see verifiable and concrete evidence that when North Korean leadership says it wants denuclearization, it will be the kind of denuclearization that the United States wants to see happening in North Korea.
They would like to see them walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Or another walk away from the summit meeting.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Bong, and thank you so much for being here with us. Sang-mi, we appreciate your perspectives on the result of the summit so far.